Tēnā tātou te whānau, nau mai whakatau mai, nau mai hara mai ki tēnei o ngā kaupapa, arā, ko Taurikura, e tū atu nei. Ko wai tēnei huri tēnei noko nei no Waikato, ko Ngāti Mahanga, Ngāti Haurua, Oku Hapu, ko te papa o rotu rawa ko Mairo Oku Marae, ko Kawina Jones, tōku ingoa, no reira tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora everybody, hey look, yes, we are back live again with you. However, the focus for us is we've been past local elections now, and we have a number of Māori sitting across local government. And now we are all ramping up and getting ready for this year's general elections. So tonight's kaupapa really is about, tonight's kaupapa is brought to you live by Taurikura New Zealand in collaboration with Tainui Live. We have a pretty awesome guest coming on live with us this evening. But before we kickstart, I quickly just want to hand it over to Kirsty. So Kirsty being my other partner in crime. For those of you who have joined us previously on our Mana Tangata Mana Māngai program and some of the other live streams that were conducted over the course of last year, as mentioned earlier, we're going to be touching and focusing on the general elections, which is taking place on the 14th of October this year. But I'm going to hand it over to Kirsty. Kei a koe tu a, Kirsty.
Kia ora te whānau, me te taha o tōku pāpā no Akatina no Irirangi ahau, ko HMS Papanui te waka, ko ngā rohini, ngā paimaunga, ko Manawatu te awa inaine, kei whatawhata I noho ana. Ko Tiratia te whare tipuna, ko Ngāti Pākehā ahau, ko te uri o Hohepa Baba, tōku hapu. Yep, really pleased to be here. Really excited about Moko coming on. I know he's going to be very, very engaging. Yeah, we're just really looking forward to trying to get people excited and engaged about these upcoming general elections, which are really going to matter for Māori. So, kia ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, Kirsty. Okay, so our first slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be focusing on the general elections this year, and we're going to be running a series of live streams. We're going to have the opportunity to be speaking with people who are politically savvy, who have been involved in local politics. We're going to get the opportunity to listen to some of the parties and some of the candidates throughout the series. So look, we've got a pretty jam-packed program for you this year. All with the intention of mobilising and getting our whānau out to vote. So obviously with local and general elections, none of that can take place unless people get out and vote. So our whole kaupapa here at Taurikura is about strengthening our voices and shaping our futures. And as we saw in our previous series with the Mana Tangata Mana Māngai live stream, we were able to conduct a number of different interviews with candidates. And so this particular series will look at exploring, one, what are the issues that matter for Māori in particular? Who are some of the political parties? What are their values? What is their policies, of course, and whether or not that it aligns with your values and some of the things that you'd like to see happen. And then, of course, later on or throughout the series, we'll get the opportunity to actually listen firsthand to some of the candidates who are looking to stand in our local electorates. So yes, we're all about planning for transformational change, and none of that can happen, particularly for Māori, if we don't have Māori standing in those seats. So we'll go to the next slide. So this is our kaupapa for this evening. So as Kirsty mentioned earlier, we have an awesome guest with us this evening. So Moko Tauariki, actually we may have had him on, I can't remember now, but we may have had him on one of our other live streams. But Moko Tauariki stood in the recent local elections. Evidently now he is one of two Māori ward councillors in Hamilton City Council. We're going to have the opportunity to listen to I guess some of his learnings, and certainly to hear some of the things that he would like to see happen. Without no further ado, so this is Moko Tauariki. He's of Ngāti Naho, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Wairere, yours truly, Ngāti Mahanga and Ngāti Mahuta descent. As I mentioned earlier, Moko stood in the last local elections, and now he's the Kirikiriroa Māori Ward Councillor at the Hamilton City Council. By just way of a quick bio, so Moko was elected to Hamilton City Council in 2022, standing on a platform of being a voice for Māori decision-making within council, better housing, better environmental standards, and improved access. Moko aims to model and lead meaningful Te Tiriti partnership that keeps people at the centre of the journey. He is the Deputy Chair of the Finance Monitoring Committee and sits on many other committees of council. Without no further ado, homai te pakipaki, a virtual pakipaki Moko Tauariki. Tēnā koe, Moko.
Tēnā koe, kawe. Thank you for that very esteemed introduction, Ewa.
Oh, hey, look, I think we may have even come short of it because I know that you've been involved and are currently involved in a number of different kaupapa outside of your council role. But look, I'm just going to quickly hand over the rākau to you, and you can just give a little quick intro to yourself, and then we're going to go through a number of different pātai throughout this live stream.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou e te whānau. He uri anō tēnei, noroto mai neki te poho nei o Waikato. Tipu nei au ki te timatanga te whakamutunga o te ao ki Rāhui Pōkeka. Kei reira tahi anō e taku ngākau nui. E noho ana e au ki roto mai neki ana i te poho nei o Kirikiriroa. Nō reira e mihi ana ki a tātou katoa. Ko Moko Tauariki taku ingoa. Kai kauni hera o Kirikiriroa. E mihi ka tika ana ki a Taurikura. Nā rātou anō ahau i poipoi ana e au mo taku tūnga mo te kauni hera o Kirikiriroa. Nō reira e mihi ana.
Kia ora, Moko. There we go. Thank you. Hey, thank you so much for that, and thank you for being part of this. We know that you're going to be one of the live wires that hopefully drives the selection. And we look forward to having you back again to talk about Te Pāti Māori, especially when we start getting in talking about parties and their whakapapa and their policies, etc. But can we just get started now? Can you talk about how you got involved in politics and not just local government, but also iwi politics? You know, what's your passion?
Yeah, well, like most things, you know, most people, as I've heard, get involved in politics largely because they're a bit upset about something. For myself, with regards to Te Kauni Hera o Kirikiriroa, you know, there are a couple of things when I first saw people like Malena Huaki and Kawe actually put their hands up in the general seats all those years ago. That was actually one point of encouragement that prompted me to potentially consider standing. And then the second part was really got up my nose, was when the Hamilton City Council voted against the introduction of the Māori seats, of the Māori wards. And so that really got up my nose. And to me, given the level of relationship that Te Kauni Hera of Kirikiriroa had supposedly been forging with tangata whenua, with mana whenua, with the iwi, with mātāwaka, I would have thought that making the decision to have Māori wards would have been a no-brainer. So it took the influence of our Māori community, and might I add that it wasn't just Māori people that stood up for the introduction of the Māori wards. There were many non-Māori whānau that also supported the introduction of those Māori ward seats. And so, and I made a submission, of course, and long and behold, council went into urgent caucus at that time, and yeah, voila, they changed their minds, and the Māori ward seats were all of a sudden a reality, and so it became really poignant at that point in my life last year, that standing in one of those seats just had to be something that I needed to do.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So what has your experience been? What have you learned since you've been in Konihera?
Oh, look, there's been quite a lot of experiences. I mean, at the moment, it's almost like my full-time job. I guess there's so much. So I guess the oati, or the oath swearing. So we'll go right down to the beginning. The oath swearing. I was a little bit concerned around who I might need to be giving my allegiance to. And given how I give a whole lot of my mates that are in the public service, whether they're a police officer in the army or in law, because in each of those particular professions, they're very clear about the sort of oath that you need to take. It may have changed over the years, but I know that there is an element of having to swear your allegiance to, at that time, Queen Iri Hapiti, Queen Elizabeth, and so that just wasn't something that I was quite keen to do. And so when I looked at my oath swearing, there was none of that sort of reference in there, and so I felt very comfortable reading out what I read. I read it in both Māori and in English, and so that took place up at the Kopu Mani o Kirikiri Roa Marae, up in what was the old, Wintec as we know it. So that was the first time, as I understand it, council had an oath swearing outside of the chamber. And so I felt very comfortable on that day. It was good to see a lot of our whānau there to witness that event. It was the first time that I had actually met some of the councillors, some of my colleagues. We then went straight into our first committee hui on that same day, which was really just, it wasn't a business as usual type hui. It was really just confirming a few agenda items for the meeting that was going to take place in the month of November. And so, and then we get to our first meeting. But in between then, we've been going through a whole suite of inductions, and to some degree, I'm still going through a level of induction because our council is so massive. And if time permitting, Kirsty, I'd like to show you a bit of a roadmap, a flow chart of what council is across. It's just I won't go into detail on it. I'll just show you what the flow chart kind of looks like if we have time. But I will say that in all the inductions that I have had, I have been very impressed with a number of presenters' references to Te Ture Whaimana o Te Awa, or the vision and strategy of the Waikato River. And so that has almost been spoken to through just about every aspect of the inductions that I've attended. And there have been many inductions from each of the different services that our Konihera delivers. And so it's not lost on me that there are a lot of genuine people in there that are very committed to the well-being of our hapori, of our city. It's also not lost on me that there are some gaps in terms of the provision of te tiriti across the organisation and how our organisation gives effect to te tiriti. And so my observations to date have been actually quite positive. I've had a few bump head moments with some of my colleagues in the chamber and outside of the chamber. Actually, not so much in the chamber, to be fair. It's been I think I've behaved But outside of the chamber, when we're not in the public eye, yeah, we can have a few debate, and that's how it should be. To be fair, I think we need to be seen in the public as being a united council. To show anything otherwise is actually not a good look for any organizer, for any level of leadership, in my opinion. And so enjoy some of the debates that we have outside of council. And to be fair, you know, haven't really had anything that's, you know, it's nothing like that we might have at the marae, or not yet. So those are
But actually, I must admit, Tapura Thompson, who we interviewed for our rangaho aspect too, she talked about that the māngai, and that's the Māori way, isn't it? So, and of course, the Awa joint management arrangement with the Awa is a perfect example of incredibly successful co-governance. Go figure. So can you see yourself being effective, being able to bring that cultural Māori lens into these debates and into the chamber?
Well, yeah, thank you for that invitation, because this gives me an opportunity to speak into the council's first ever, well, I don't know if it's their first ever, but the strategy of he po manawa ora. And so the council spent a bit of time alongside mana whenua, iwi and mātāwaka, and they came up with he po manawa ora. Po manawa ora, and to be fair, I actually submitted on that particular strategy back in 2020, I think it was, or 19 or 20, and my submission was a positive submission, congratulating council around a strategy that I could see me in it. I could see mātāwaka, I could see iwi, I could see mana whenua in it. I thought it was a little bit ambitious, but nonetheless, I think it's right for now. And with Muna Wharawhara holding that space, he's now got a staff member. His name is Wirihana Huaki. He uri anō no Taharoa, he ira mutu Malaina ma. And so he's been with us probably just over a month now. And so he's thinking, and his job is to implement He Po Manawa Ora. And one of the big items on his work program is going to be putting together, writing a te tiriti policy for our kaunihera. Now, I don't imagine that needs to take too long, to be fair. We have a number of examples that we can draw upon. But what we want to make sure that we do well is to incorporate the voices and the aspirations, wawatanga moimoia of our Māori community and our non-Māori community. I guess in many ways we want to make sure that we are able to, and this is what I continually espouse to be, is to model and lead a good te tiriti relationship, a good, meaningful, genuine te tiriti partnership. And so that doesn't mean that I need to, or Māori need to be exclusively leading in that space. That's a two-way street. And so this is part of the education that comes with understanding all nuances of te tiriti in its purest form.
That all sounds amazingly positive, Moko. Can you see that kind of, and we had the same experience where Lisa Thompson had been on her own in the Waikato District Council for 2 terms. Now all of a sudden there's 5 of them, and the culture just has to change when that happens, doesn't it? Can you see that being translated into Parliament and the effectiveness, the outcomes, the kōrero that's happening in your council? Can you see that, also in the national setting?
Oh, crikey. Well, I mean, I can only speak from what I've observed and what I've been able to experience. I'm in the council because of the leadership of Nanaia Mahuta and her role at that time as the Minister for Local Government. And so I am a product, and many of us that hold these seats, we are products of that mahi, that call, that first step to giving some level of some level of commitment to this partnership that we have within Te Tiriti. So that's the first part that I really need to acknowledge. Should there be a change of government, you know, I would really struggle, because the key thing that we need to remember here, Kirsty, is that these seats are not entrenched in law. Okay, and so at the first hui that we had with the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta last year, when we all came together down in Wellington as local government representatives and from our respective councils, or Māori representatives from our respective councils from all over the country, Nanaia gave a awesome motivational kōrero, but she did stress the point that our seats are not entrenched in law, and that the government would not be able to do that until 2025, so at the next election. So what that tells me is that should this year there be a change of government, I'm not too sure whether I have the same level of faith in National and ACT as a coalition governing body, should they get in. Let's remember here, people are also talking as if the government is going to change. That doesn't necessarily mean that that has to be the case. But if they are going to get in, and I'm not dismissing them either, if they are going to get in, we need them to observe some of the great stuff that this current government has done. That should be the bottom line for any government coming into power. So I would expect that they would see the entrenchment of the Māori ward seats as a given in the year 2025, and that they shouldn't prolong that. I think the necessary work has been done in order for the next government to just come in and just say, yep, business as usual, this is on the timeline. All councils, this is the key thing I want to stress, is that all councils, because at the moment there are still a number of councils around the country that don't have Māori wards. And that's because it's their option. It's their option at the moment, so it's not compulsory. And so we need to actually make it it's a legal requirement. It's an unfortunate that we have to go through, you know, Te Ture Pākehā LAW processes to give effect to Te Tiriti. But if that's the way we've got to go, then that's the way we've got to go. And so 2025 is that magic year, if you like, for us to get those. Now, should a change of government happen, I would imagine that the movers and shakers of our Māori world will be lobbying central government, and I can guarantee you that petitions, whether they're in paper form or physical form, will be happening. Moko Tauariki,
and there's tangata tiriti that'll be there too.
And tangata tiriti will be there, absolutely. And this is the great thing, you know, if we go back to the Springbok tour, you know, all those many years ago, there were many Pākehā right up there in the front row taking those batons to their head because of a cause that we didn't believe in. And I think that was a good demonstration of good Te Tiriti partnerships back in 1981.
Yeah. Maybe not so much at Orake with the National Guard and all of that stuff that was happening, but never mind. I know I mentioned to you before that I've stolen Te Pāti Māori's slogan because I just think it's so brilliant. Believe in you, believe in me, believe in Māori. You know, I mean, and I think there are enough of us colonising palefaces that I think there would be an uprising. I'm a bit more optimistic than you, even if by some chance the other lot got in. I'm optimistic that there'd be an uprising. Hey, can I just finally finish with this slide? So what do you see at the moment, and especially looking ahead to the October elections, what are the challenges for Māori? What are the opportunities for Māori in having a voice in the general elections? Yeah,
absolutely. And hey, the apathy of voters in general for these elections for these local bodies elections was very poor. And it's not just from Māori Pacific communities, it was from all communities. But the key thing that we need to focus on, Kirsty, is enrolling our people to vote. The number of people, and I will say this, the number of professionals that I have worked with who have never voted. And it took me less than 3 minutes to enroll them right there right at that time on their using their phone, less than 3 minutes to get them enrolled. Now, they were a little bit whakamart that I had caught them out. Because they weren't even enrolled to vote. So that's probably the biggest drive I would stress, is that we look at our champions that are in the business of local government or even central government and our whānau, and we task them with actually, and as Tipa Mahuta would say, go and tell a kazi, and the kazi would tell a kazi, and another kazi would tell a kazi, and that kumara vaino kazis getting each other enrolled to vote is quicker than fibre. It's quicker than the internet. That's how quickly our people can move. And if we just look at the example of the natural disasters that we have seen in this last 6 months, Kirsty, we would see the ability of Māori to mobilise and to ensure the development of manaakitanga is paramount. Now, I would like us to take that same level of response to enrol to vote. And like I said, it takes actually less than 3 minutes to get all of that stuff done on a phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
now,
actually, that's why we need a better title, but I've used the, honouring good old Bob Marley. People get ready, the train is coming. But we need to change. We need to change the title. Hey, thank you so much for that. We'll get on to the next slide, and Kowie gets to chat with you after this.
All right.
Out to our younger demographic, in particular rangatahi, and the importance of actually of getting them involved. But of course, yes, they're back. So our 2 girls are back, ready to rock and roll. And if you haven't already, please check out our TikTok, which is mana tangata _ mana mangai. And then, of course, we're on a number of different other platforms, both Facebook and Instagram. So I just especially want to shout out to the 2 girls in assisting and helping us to reach out to a younger audience. So yeah, just watch the space, whānau. There's going to be a lot more content coming out later on throughout this series, and we're going to be specifically focusing on mobilising and getting people out to vote. But I wanted to touch on really about some of the important issues that are relevant for Māori, and was hoping actually, Moko, that you can share with us some of your experiences and also some of your insights around, I guess, what you know to be some of the local issues. So albeit that you've been a councillor now in Hamilton City Council for, what, has it been less than 6 months?
Yeah, it's been about 5 months now, Kowie. And great partai, excellent partai. And I'll use this example. You just need to walk down, drive down Ulster Street just to see the level of need that our people need. We have pretty much every single motel down Ulster Street packed up with as emergency housing. And the majority, I would say 80 to 90% of people living in those apartments and those motels, they are Māori. And so if I were to look at what an immediate need for our Māori Pacific communities are, it's actually housing. That's probably one of the biggest ones that I can see quite urgently that needs to happen in order to address some of the significant needs. Now, let me contextualize that a little bit in terms of the economic impact that no motels have had on our community. We had the New Zealand Sevens here in January. Now, traditionally that's a significant revenue generator for our whole community. But because we weren't able to put visitors in those motels, the impact is that people don't come to that event. I went to the Sevens event. It was a great event because we do it better than Wellington. Wellington actually don't appreciate the Sevens like we do. But at the same time, putting a roof over our whānau's head is more important than a Sevens event. So this is a question not just for council, but it's a question for the Kāinga Ora, who I know Andy Mannering is doing some great work with our whānau in that space, and so mihi to Andy Mannering from Kāinga Ora. But also I do know that our tribe have got some housing projects on the pipeline. I'd like to hope that our tribe, in terms of Waikato Tainui, have a portion, a percentage of those homes for whānau that are living in emergency homes. So I've not had that conversation with them yet, but I'm sure that at some point in the future that conversation is coming. So that's probably one of the biggest ones that I can see right now in my role, kawe, that is affecting our Māori people quite in a very bad way. No houses.
And yeah, and look, actually, I want to kind of touch on a little bit about that, because of course, recently we've kind of experienced some pretty significant events. I mean, look, I feel like we've just really come out of the crux of COVID, and actually now really it's almost kind of just a daily thing for us, and we're all learning to live with COVID. But as I mentioned earlier, more recently we've gone through a number, I guess not so much Waikato has been impacted as some of the other regions, be that up in Tāmaki, Tairāwhiti and Heretaunga. And then, of course, we've got, I guess, some of the things that probably be more relevant to some of the mahi that local government has been involved in, i.e. RMA, some of the things around co-governance, and then, of course, in, the proposal around the Three Waters reform. Has any of those things kind of been amplified since your tenure at the council, and does that do any of those things seem to be a priority for Māori, or would you say that Māori just don't know too much about or aren't well informed about either of those things?
Yeah, well, given the high profile that all of those reforms have had over the past, 2 years, they're definitely on the forefront. With Nanaia now not the Minister for Local Government, you just got to read between the lines on how Kieran McAnulty is speaking into local government. Not too sure exactly the length of changes that he's going to make as the minister in that space in terms of the Three Waters stuff. And also with regards to the local government review. Now, what I have done since I have been in the council is pay close attention and dig my feet into the local government review. And so a team has been put together, and I'm quite happy about the level of contribution that people like Antoine Coffey have had in that space in terms of making sure that the provisions of Te Tiriti are made within the submission from local government or external bodies to local government. And I had an opportunity to participate in a workshop where we were looking at a Q&A session around the review for local government, and our council says it doesn't go far enough. We probably need a lot more needs to happen in terms of change in there, which I was quite happy about, that our council was doing that, along with Tauranga. I think Tauranga's got their own issues, but anyway. But for me, making sure, because I see the Local Government Act of 2002 as our almost like a job description. That's what governs us. That's what actually we need to abide by. And so I see it like a job description. So essentially, we're given an opportunity to help shape our job description. And so making things like Māori wards, Māngai Māori, a normal part of our business, making sure that all councils around the country have a Te Tiriti policy, have cultural capability training, do have staff that are able to, there's a whole host of things in that review that are recognised and are being sent through to Wellington. So I've probably spent most of my time in that space. My own personal views might get myself into a little bit of trouble here, but I'm quite happy to share this quite openly, to be fair. RMA, as you know, I have a very strong RMA background, and I'm not entirely confident that the level of reform that's proposed in terms of resource management is right. To be fair, I think it's become even more complicated than it already is. And so, if I were to choose whether I would side with the proposed reform or stick with what we've got, to be fair, at this current time, I'm probably more inclined to stick with what we've got. You know, and that's not that's quite a difficult thing to sort of to say when you've got someone that has, you know, who I have full confidence that the reform must certainly have a good end, but I can't. I'm struggling to see that. I've really struggled to see that through the two proposed pieces of legislation. But also, when you add the water entities bill on top of that, you're essentially needing to planners and even our own people would need to actually go through 3 pieces of legislation in order to try and articulate their point to developers. And I think that potentially makes it a little bit more complex. Māori champions across the resource management space is already scarce. So, yeah, and 3 waters. Yep. Well, it's legislation now. So the entities A, B, C, and D. I think they've all got their big bosses. For entity B, which is where Kirikiriroa fits into, we have Vaughan Payne as the manager or CE. Not sure what his actual title is, but yeah, I've really immersed myself in all of that stuff, kawe, and it's a lot of reading. It's very arduous. To be fair, it's unless you like reading transformative stuff, the stuff will come across as really boring.
Would you say though that Māori, that it'll be an issue, that it is something that's important to Māori? So when we look at co-governance, when we look around, when we look at the 3 waters and what is now kind of the implementation of that, from your local knowledge and certainly some of the conversations that you've been sharing on the ground, do these seem to be some of the things that Māori in particular are interested in?
Oh yeah, well, yes. Given the capability of our local hapu and their ability to actually articulate and speak for themselves, I would say yes. Given my observations of our hapu, particularly as a collective within that forum of Te Hao, Te Whenua, Kirikiriroa, particularly around resource management stuff, I would say that our hapu are building their capability and have been building their capability for some years. And so I think there is another phase that our hapu are potentially going to need to go through, and that's around actually the succession plan of our taiao champions. We need those taiao champions because urban growth, development is going to come hard and fast, particularly if there's a change of government. I believe they will move legislation to accelerate things. Now, that's not entirely a bad thing, but we're going to need some young, very onto it taiao champions. We're going to need some economic development champions. We're going to need some water experts. You can just about put your finger on every type of reform that we need, including health. We're going to need those champions from across our Māori communities, kawe. And so while we do have a lot of our whānau that have a lot of these skills, to be fair, they are actually getting picked up by the state service sector. They've been getting offered really good money, and you know, I don't begrudge that. Good on them that they're being valued, but we simply as mana whenua, we actually don't have any money. We can't keep up with the pace of what we should be. We can't. We struggle to attract our whānau back to the marae for hui. And so we actually need to sit down. When I say we, our mana whenua as a collective need to sit down and look at the growth of Kirikiriroa over the next 10 years and plan accordingly. We almost need our own long-term plan.
Right. Hey, look, I want to actually just come back to one of the first major issues that you talked about, which was housing. Now, look, we could probably go on about this for quite some time, and obviously, in conjunction with housing, there are a number of nuances that come with that, i.e., mental health, unemployment, intergenerational dependence on government, assistance. So outside of housing and means of important issues for Māori, what else would you say that will coincide with things like housing that you know from your experience, certainly from your observations and your tenure, are prevalent or are kind of key things that that Māori, that are important for Māori?
Yeah. The next one to that, kawe, is health. Is health. Then I don't know if you've followed the latest stories in the media, mainstream media, around the 700 nurses that we're going to be short in our country. And so as a result of that, that already 8-hour waiting time that you're going to have in the A&E is probably going to be doubled. So I would say that, and we know that Māori are at the top of that waiting list, and so they're going to be affected more by the shortfall of nurses, but just that whole structure, that whole system in general. Now, I'd like to hope that the Māori Health Authority will bring some solutions to our people, particularly as we move into winter. I think the Māori Health Authority is being stood up now for probably about a year now. So I think we really are going to be looking to them for some guidance and some leadership around how we are going to make healthcare a lot more accessible to our people.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so just so I'm hearing, so we've got housing, and then also we've got health, but I guess across a broader view of the health system, not just kind of like emergency and that type of stuff. But what you're saying is actually across the board, health is an issue for Māori.
Yeah, it is, and I know it's not a council thing. But we play our part we need to play our part in terms of helping to prevent health. And this is where we have some sharp people like Jackie Collier, who actually understand what some of the flood issues are for our city are, and so how lucky are we to have that level, that caliber of one of our own, knowing the parts of the flood. When parts of our regions are very bad, that causes a lot of respiratory issues for our whānau and our vulnerable whānau. And so by addressing that flood issue, we potentially address or prevent our whānau from getting sick. So yeah. That's the link back to councils.
Awesome. Hey, look, so obviously elections are coming up on the 14th of October, and we soon, actually, I can come the 31st of March, we're going to be the Māori electoral option for people to change over will take place. And so I'm going to hand it over to Kirsty now, and she's just going to touch on a little bit about that particular process.
Kia ora anō. Hey, I just wanted to say too, thank you so much for that, Moko. But that Te Wāhiki mai, the future is now, and this is one of the struggles for local government, but also as Māori are making decisions about who they vote for in the central government elections. Making mokopuna decisions, we need to be making them with the future in mind as well, eh?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, whoever came up with that slogan, making mokopuna decisions, man.
It was your namesake, actually. It was Jill Day, who's now the chair of the Labour Party in Moko Tauariki, far north DC.
Oh, well, yeah, hey,
They came up with it down in Papaoia. It was
Yeah.
brilliant, and we asked, we got approval, we said, can we use that? And they said, yes, sure. So
Yeah.
it's brilliant.
That is awesome.
Can we have the next slide, please, Sharon? Kia ora. Hey, look, Moko's touched on it, and it's too big a kaupapa to deal with properly just in this. So we're just putting a bookmark in, and we'll probably get Moko back halfway through the year to talk more about, you know, and especially around strategies around the Māori electoral option. But yes, as he mentioned before, from the 31st of March, no longer are Māori going to be pinned to 5 years. How ridiculous. It's as bad as going and asking all the Pākehās about Māori wards. So you'll actually be able to change or choose which role you're on and switch between them. The only proviso for that is the 3 months before a general election. You won't be able to, because the candidates and everything will have been named. We will talk about it before more, because there is some really strategic thinking that needs to go through, and being able to change and work out what's going to work best in your rohi for this election is going to be quite paramount. But we're just going to have, oh yeah, and this is another one. I know I'm such a fangirl of Tipper's, Moko. I love that, get a kazi to tell a kazi. Or Kawe actually has amended it to get an auntie to tell an auntie. You know, the old ear.
Yeah. True.
This is another one that I love, that she said, you know, they have to talk with us if we were in the room. They can't just talk about us. So can we just have that little video clip now, which you'll notice is actually older now. So March 31st, it's actually going to change, but it's still a cool little clip.
If you're Māori and you're 18 or over, the time has come around again to make a choice. It affects who you can vote for to represent you and your local area in Parliament. And it's a simple choice. Whether you want to be enrolled to vote on the general roll or the Māori roll. Either way, you'll still be able to vote for any party you like when there's an election. Nothing changes that. We don't get to choose again for another 5 years. So let's think about it now. If you're not sure what this is all about, talk it over with your whānau and friends. We'll be mailing you some info next week. Māori roll or general roll. It's your choice. Hea hau whakaaro.
Kia ora. So like I said, that's just a bookmark. And we're now, we'll be talking about that more, and probably get Moko back as well to talk about that. So Koe, it's you now.
Kapai. Actually, yeah. So, look, we obviously know now the importance of why Māori should get out and vote. And actually, you're an example of someone who's actually put their hand up and chose to, or bravely chose to stand up in the recent local elections. But I want to touch on, of course, with the general elections approaching us, actually, like why is it important for Māori to get involved? So we already know the importance of diversity, particularly Māori and mana whenua being involved in the democratic processes. As Kirsty mentioned earlier, you know, making mokopuna, being able to make mokopuna decisions, and that comes hand in hand with Māori. It also presents us. It allows for us to bring into council, to bring into government a new lens, a Māori lens, a Māori perspective. But I wanted you maybe just to talk through about how can people get ready and prepared for October 14th. And I know that traditionally, both in the local and general elections, particularly for Māori, it hasn't always been actually. The population, when we look at it, actually hasn't in the past been that open to going to the polls. But wanted to kind of probe a little bit and kind of get some of your whakaaro on, you know, what can people do to get ready and prepared for this up and coming general elections in October?
Enroll onto the Māori roll. And for those ones that are on the general roll and have wanted to jump onto the Māori roll, well, now is their time. So they're going to have between basically from the 1st of April and the end of June, I think it is, works out to be the end of June for them to be able to switch roles. The key point that I do want to highlight here, Koe, is that the more people that we have on the Māori roll, the more seats in Parliament that we have. The more seats in Parliament that we have, Māori seats that is, the more spokespeople that we have for Māori issues. And if we go back to what's good for Māori, will in fact actually be good for the nation. Māori is all about keeping everything in-house, keeping our own whenua, keeping our own water, keeping our own natural resources. And so the concepts of exploitation of any of that sort of stuff doesn't fit our manifesto, if you like. And so we are about keeping that all here, being reliant on our own resources rather than being reliant on international resources. And so the fiscal benefit, the environment benefit, still sits here with us here in Aotearoa. The other reason we need to get involved in, in local body, in central government, central body elections, whānau, is because there is so much happening out there in the communities that thinking that Parliament is going to actually solve it is a big dream. It's an illusion because they're not going to solve it. The true champions of solutions are actually our communities, and so we need our people to be politically savvy as well as culturally savvy, but and keep that community savvy balance. Now, for our whānau to move between one place and another, sometimes that balance is caught out of kilter. And so the challenge that I'm having as a kaikauni header is making sure that I'm going to be a seen face out in the communities. Now, on some of the weekends when I would traditionally love to be out trying to fish, I'm conscious that there's a community event on over in Melville, and so that's where I need to be. I need to be making sure that I get in the first-hand glance around some of the issues that are affecting in particular, our Māori communities, but also a responsibility back to Kirikiriroa as a whole.
Actually, about 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go along to a conference whereby there was a panel of rangatahi actually that spoke to a number of different issues. And actually what excited me from I guess just listening to them is really the future, So now we're seeing the fruits and product of particularly Māori who come through the pipeline of kohanga reo, kura kaupapa Māori, and have evidently carried their reo, their tikanga throughout their education. Very articulate, well put together, politically astute. However, there still seems to be this misconception that young people in particular are disengaged with both local and general elections. But some of the kōrero that's come out of that is actually it's not that they're uneducated, it's not that they don't want to be involved, but I guess what they see from the outside looking in, particularly in government structures, albeit local, regional, or general, that it's just not conducive to the environments that they want to be involved in. So how do we excite them? How do we get them involved? Because as I mentioned earlier, it's not that they aren't well versed, and are very, very, very articulate and understand the landscape. But how do we get them involved in things like elections, things like being involved with local political parties? So what's your whakaaro on that?
Oh yeah, I've got a good one here, and thank you for this opportunity. You would know that the review for local government is also proposing lowering the age for young people to vote, And so my view was, even if we did lower it, I'm not too sure whether we will see a significant turnout of young people voting. However, that said, I am in favour of lowering the voting age to 16. I have absolutely no qualms about that, and I hear lots of people different views. But in terms of building up interest, this is a good one. So I think when we have these types of platforms like what we are having now, Kawe, if we reflect on how local government, how central government elections are done on TV, where you have, you know, particular candidates all getting up on TV and they're canvassing their views, they're campaigning, they're selling themselves, they're selling their party line. And then they will go to a panel of experts who will interrogate what they heard and provide feedback. And I think that's the sort of platform that our young people need. We need them to be the panel of experts so that they can actually articulate what they heard and to provide their feedback. And so I see that as one way in how we build up some interest from our young rangatahi community. And I think that I'd like to see something like that actually happen within our community. I'm only going to speak for the Kirikiriroa community because that's the only place that I can get across. But I'd like to hope that we would be able to implement something like that, a panel of rangatahi who are the experts, and they're going to provide feedback in the same way that an adult or a more senior person in commentary. So that's one way that I would like to try and build up some interest. The other thing that I think we need to do is to enable and support our rangatahi to fashion their own path. I don't think I'm the best person to speak to rangatahi on how they might do that, but I do know that there are other people who are more versed in that space than I. And so let's get them to help facilitate those conversations for our young people to fashion their own pathway in terms of how they might want to participate in central local body elections. Yeah,
I like that. Actually, that's a really good idea. I'm just thinking, Kirsty, it might be really good to have a bit of a panel going of just rangatahi to actually understand some of their issues. So thank you. Actually, that's a really good point. So look, on the point of parties, you know, so let's be honest, there's a whole menu of them. And sometimes it's really hard to decipher or to determine, you know, like a who's who in the zoo. You know, which one should I vote for? And then in some cases, you've got, you know, people who you know in political parties, and you think, oh, okay, what shall I vote for them just because I know them, or shall I vote for them because of their policy, the policies that their party stands for? Like, how does one navigate that place to when it comes to actually, particularly when it comes to Māori selecting political parties?
For me, just for me personally, I first started out looking at what the party was going to do in terms of recognising and providing for our taiao. That for me was a benchmarker. And so when in the past, I've been a very strong Green Party supporter. And it's not saying that I don't support them now. What I'm saying is that actually they were almost guaranteed my vote every election because of their commitment to the taiao. So that's something that I look at. Now I'm looking for what the party is going to do in terms of modelling and leading a good te tiriti partnership. How are they recognising and providing for te tiriti within their party's manifesto, and how are they going to be able to demonstrate what equity and partnership looks like should they become a governing party? And so if they're not able to articulate what equity looks like, and when I say, if I use the matter of equity in terms of employment in the state service sector, I'd like to know that actually there is a commitment to ensure that we have whānau Māori who possess a level of cultural competencies and capabilities, mātauranga Māori, te tiriti knowledge, etc., etc., that ensures that the state services sector in particular is going to have people that are able to make sure that the Māori consumers of their service are not going to be disadvantaged. That's probably just an example of one way in how I measure how I will give my vote. Now, candidates are very rarely able to articulate that in their campaign, and so you've got to sort of pay attention to the policies that they are talking into. And so I'm looking forward to the policies that all the parties are going to be rolling out. I already know in my mind which parties I'm not going to vote for, because the policies that they've already spoken into do not line up with the preservation of the environment. In fact, they're quite the opposite. They're about exploitation, and they do not line up with Māori having a right. And so you have political parties who will translate right into a privilege. No, this is not a bloody privilege. This is a right under te tiriti o Waitangi. And so when you have parties that don't actually understand those, I'm able to cancel them out straight away.
I mean, some of the other things that we've heard too is the pure line of you know, if I don't know, why should I care? You know, if I don't know, I don't care. So how, I mean, what would your advice be to others on that in means of, you know, trying to, I guess, what would your advice be around particularly those ones who out of sight, out of mind, and, well, I don't know anything about it, so I'm just not going to bother?
Yeah, good question. I guess if I think about the role that I have as a counsellor, I was just thinking about this the other day when we were in chamber, and I was looking around at the public audience, and I didn't see me in that audience, and that's probably because our whānau don't know. But to be fair, when we do have our meetings, our whānau are at work, and so it's always going to be a very big challenge for anyone that's working full-time to attend a council meeting in person. And so I guess probably the next best option is to encourage them to watch our hui are done online. And I'm hoping that those people that have been watching, and I know that there are some people watching, they message me and they say, bro, I heard you hold the line in terms of our te tiriti right, and they give me a thank you. That's all they wanted to do. I think platforms like social media, like TikTok, like YouTube, this is where our young people are clever. You can actually give them kaupapa like this, and they will come up with a solution. And I'm probably too indoctrinated in a really pakeke way, and I like to think that I'm current just because I got a TikTok account, and I tell people I've got a TikTok account. It's Moko 828 if you want to be a little funny. But to be fair, I think I'm way out of touch of that generation of being able to innovatively come up with strategies and solutions around how to reach an audience, how to reach in a very interactive way. I guess I represent a generation whereby I want things real quick. I want messaging real quick. We all do now, because that's the world that we're in. We want it real quick, and I don't necessarily think it's my generation that knows how to do that well. I can articulate what I want, the messaging that I want to get across, but I would need to give that over to a young person to actually come up with how they're going to get that across. And I think that's the working relationship that we need to have between our pakeke and our kaumātua and our rangatai, or our mokopuna. That's how we reach that audience. And the only way we can do that, so if we look at this platform right here, I'd like to hope that, you know, following your kōrero with me, you will then go to the panel of rangatahi, and you will actually start interviewing them and seeking their expert feedback as to what they heard from Moko Tauariki and whether any of it landed. And I think we need to have that in an open forum so that everyone can see. Now, the young kazis, the young whānau that are on here, they instantly bring with them each probably about 20 to 30 viewers. So your viewership has already gone up by 6,000%.
Totally agree.
Hey, so
Kapai,
I think we give them some leadership functions. We let them actually and not saying that you're not going to be able to control the platform, but you're going to seek their guidance and their expert advice around what they.
Absolutely, we picked up on that. We're already planning on our little chat here to do exactly that. What an amazing idea. Hey, just to finish, I follow on from Koe though. That quote, if I don't know, I don't care, actually came from the rangaho we did, because our tangata whenua cohort, they were going, well, I don't know anything about it, I don't care. But you're quite right, even though I'm a puhi, as we know, but the same thing happened. And then we got these younger, we went exactly what you said, which is how we got Tracy and Mahinarangi involved. But the interesting part is they got really engaged, and actually at one point with one of their TikToks, they had to go, do you remember what it was like when you didn't know stuff? Because they were actually starting to do the too much detail, because they were so engaged in it themselves. So we're really, really amazed that they came on board. And you're quite right that perspective keeps us fresh,
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. Look, I know we've gone over time, but thank you so much. We've been great. You've been great and very articulate, and we will definitely have you back. This was just looking ahead to what's coming up in this kaupapa. So we're basically going to put it into three. Oh, whoops, can we go back a bit? Thank you. We're just going to put it into 3 parts over the course of this year. So the first part is about what the issues, the choices you have, what the implications and impacts, and like and Moko has said, what to look for, what is important, what kinds of things are your line, and what will you hold. Then we'll have a closer look at the Māori electoral option and look at the, as Moko pointed out, unfortunately that won't happen in October, so we won't get more seats by this general election. So there's some strategy involved. We'll then be in the middle of the year, we'll actually look on different parties, their policies, their values, their whakapapa, why would you align with them, and Moko will come back and talk about Te Pāti Māori. And hopefully Rawiri Waititi as well. We're still trying to get hold of him. And then the practical stuff about enrolling to vote and voting. And then, like Koe mentioned earlier, the candidates, and that's everything from our Māori electorates, which is Hauraki Waikato here, then the various Hamilton ones, Waikato itself, Taranaki, King Country, so all the ones that are local to us. But so yeah, just last slide now. Thanks, Sharon, and Koe will wind up.
Awesome. Hey, look, so just in closing, just really want to take the opportunity to thank you again, Moko. And look, this won't actually be the last of kind of these or our live stream with you, albeit that you're in your own home with your own whānau. And actually earlier on we got to check out your little cooking skills and whether or not that your kids enjoyed it or not. So we'll wait wait for the feedback. But yeah, just really want to take this time, Moko, to thank you for giving up your time, and then of course all of the mahi that you're doing and that you're championing within the Hamilton City Council. I want to also congratulate you on your deputy chair role on the finance committee, and also some of the other things that you've been involved in. So look, that really concludes this evening. All of this will be available both on the Tainui Live, on numerous platforms, Tainui Live, Mana Tangata, Mana Māngai, Taurikura New Zealand, both on our YouTube, and also we have our TikTok, which is Mana Tangata _ Mana Māngai. I think that's it anyway. But just really take your point, some of the key points that you raised throughout tonight's series. So obviously some of the important issues being housing, health in particular for Māori, the importance for Māori getting out and voting, how does Māori look to determine this kind of big menu of parties, and how might they align, what they need to do. Certainly we'll take on some of the points that you raised around how to, what we can do better to engage, and we're actually we're gonna adopt that into this program, and means of bringing on board a rangatahi panel for us to really kind of give us some critical feedback, because like you say, sometimes we do become a little bit indoctrinated as to, I guess, how we want to do things, and sometimes it's all about simplicity, and it's not always about jamming in as much information as possible, albeit that's what we want to kind of happen. But rangatahi, for some reason, seem to be able to condense this in a real simple but innovative format. And so we want to be able to do some discovery sessions in means of the engagement with that particular audience. So yeah, just again on behalf of Tainui Live and Taurikura New Zealand, just really want to thank also those of our viewers, those people who have taken the time out to join us this evening. We are looking to be back here in a fortnight's time, whereby that we'll be doing similar kaupapa as we've already conducted this evening. But on behalf of myself, Kirsty and Sharon, who most times people don't get the chance to see, but she's behind the scenes. She's the one really kind of making sure that all of this technical stuff happens. On behalf of us three, we just really want to thank you, Moko, and all the viewers who have tuned in and joined in with us this evening. So on that, I will close us in karakia, māku hei tuku hei whakakapi. Kia tau, kia tata katoa te ata whai o tō tātou ariki a uhu karaiti, me te aroa te atua, me te whiwhina teitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, 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 āmene.
Āmene.
Āmene.